In this video, I will show you many of the steps I take to make a custom steel waist belt for a customer. This is basically how it looks without paint, and by the end of the video you will see how it looks with its ordered red paint. This particular belt has a locking with an omega-shaped shackle, and it has two attachment loops, one on each side, which can be convenient to attach wrist cuffs. So initially I take the raw material that is basically cut out from a big pipe, and my first task is to bend that circular piece into a more of an oval shape. I'm very happy that I have a hydraulic press, which definitely makes my life very easy. And now, after I've bent the piece into an oval shape that fits the width and the depth, I need to start preparing the material to look clean, smooth, and to remove the factory mill scale, which is basically the coating that the material gets when it's being manufactured. I start with a sanding disc, which is basically the roughest possible sandpaper that I can find. And after I smooth the sides, I need to round the edges so that they are not sharp and that they are comfortable to wear. I take multiple passes, one at 45 degrees, which basically chamfers the material, and then I take a few more passes at different angles so that it creates a more rounded edge. Afterwards, I use different types of cleaning attachments to see which one works best for that particular mill scale. Here I start with the wire brush, but later I realize that it's not strong enough, so I use a different abrasive disc, which sometimes works brilliantly and in other occasions it's just not enough. So it's a matter of just trying to see what works best. After I clean up the outside and the sides, I need to split the piece so it's more convenient for me to clean on the inside. Parts of the video are sped up, like this one is like up to 10 times, so that you don't stand there watching and waiting for it to end. I take special care not to have any sharp edges anywhere. And again, cleaning the inside. In this occasion, that abrasive disc I was using before worked excellent. And you can see a before and after with the finished piece and the one that I'm about to process. Then it's time to mark the spots where I'm going to drill holes for the attachment loops. Here I'm marking spots where the drill bit from the drill press will have to find its place, so that I can drill it exactly in the right spot and everything can be symmetrical. I know some people might feel uncomfortable with me holding the piece by hand instead of clamping it in the vise of the drill press, but frankly it is faster, it's more convenient, and thankfully my drill press is quite weak, so it just doesn't have the power and the grip in its belts to snag the piece out of my hand if the drill bit manages to jam into the piece. And because of those spinning bits of metal, I like to wear a leather glove on my holding hand, because those pieces are quite sharp and they could rip apart my glove and scratch my skin, but with a leather glove it's fine. It's time to mount the hinge, because my vise is just not big enough and not practical for the usual way I'm attaching the hinges. I needed to figure out a new way to hold the hinge in place. Here I'm tack welding, just very small welds to keep the hinge in place, to keep the tolerances and the gap I want to have. And later those tack welds hold the piece in place while I'm doing the actual final welding, which can pull the piece into the direction of the weld. It gets quite tricky to weld those hinges because it can be very easy to overflow the weld onto the part of the hinge that's meant to be able to move, and thus I could jam the hinge. Ooh, that got quite hot and it took a while to cool down. Now it's time to align the second part of the belt so that everything is parallel. Those little tack welds definitely don't happen in a flash like I did, but I messed up my camera settings, so I decided to have a little bit of fun with the edit. And now this small tack weld holds my pieces together and I can weld the hinge properly. I try to take special care not to overflow too much, not to leave too little weld in places. so I need very precise control exactly when I need to stop welding. And now I'm welding the inside of the hinge. I like the way that the metal flows into the gap. Many of those welding shots are quite sped up, because I don't want you to be bored. Testing again if the hinge moves. It does. And now it's time for the locking plates to find their place and to be welded on the belt. And I'm bumping the tripod because it's way too close to me. And here I forgot to set my camera settings properly, so let's rush through it. In order for the locking plates to stay in place, I needed to weld them together very gently so that I can drill them properly, all the holes would align, but later I had to break those welds apart so I could open the belt. Now welding the inside of the locking plate. And now it's time to mount the attachment loops. Takes a bit of wiggling, but it goes in. On some occasions I have the material of the attachment loops protruding out, so I could use that to blend the two metals together, and I don't need to add any additional welding rod. And after I'm done with all the basic construction, now it's time for me to clean up everything and to smooth all the welds. Again, in order for you to not get too bored with all the repetitive hundreds of moves, I've cut big chunks of the process video and left only the start and the finish, and it kinda looks more fun and satisfying, but it definitely takes a lot longer than it looks. For the attachment plates to stay in place and to not get sanded unequally, I use the drill bit that I drilled the holes with to keep those plates parallel and in place. Again, rounding the edges, smoothing the surfaces. I also chamfer the edges of the holes so that the paint or the varnish can hold better. Rounding the edges of the hinges again. Also removing the protruding welds from the attachment loops. I like them all flush. And the final step is wire brushing the entire piece so that there's no discoloration, everything would look smooth. Any small sharp bits that may be left from the sanding would be removed as well. And this is how it looks after I finished wire brushing it. And this is the way it looks with the red paint. And here's another model of a waist belt that was a different size and that fit quite well on my girlfriend. This one has 6 attachment loops and the locking plates are oriented a bit more differently so that a padlock can fit a bit more practically. And as usual, thank you very much for watching. I hope you like what you see, and don't forget to check out my store on mypersonaldungeon.etsy.com or mypersonaldungeon.com. Stay kinky and have fun.